Is it possible that the Big 12 could still add some schools from the Pac-12 in the next round of expansion? Pull up a chair, sit back, relax, and let's talk about it. What is up, college sports fans, Big 12 fans, and fellow members of Mountaineer Nation? This is Coos. Welcome in to another edition of Coos' Corner. Pull that chair up and let me serve you up another shot of top shelf college football content. On tap in this episode, we are talking potential Big 12 expansion and can they still add some Pac-12 schools? Now, when it was announced a few weeks ago that the Big 12 had agreed in principle with ESPN and Fox to extend their current Big 12 media deal with those two networks, the Big 12 fans started chatter again. Hey, man, this means that we're going to get our deal done before the Pac-12. This means that, we can go expand and get some Pac-12 schools. Well, then you hear the amount, about $31.66 million per school per year through 2031. And then, of course, that doesn't include college football playoff money and whatnot. It could get up to $50 million per school per year. So then you're thinking, well, that amount's probably not going to entice a Pac-12 school to leave the Pac-12 for the Big 12 because they're probably going to make just as much when they get their media deal done. Okay, so then I'm thinking, okay, well, then it's not going to happen. Big 12's not getting any Pac-12 schools. Then I hear that there's a pro-rata clause in the Big 12 media deal that if they add schools, it will actually increase the revenue payout for the conference. Well, then I think, well, wait a minute. Okay, they can add because if they add, then they'll get paid for adding those schools. Not so fast, my friend. I had to tell myself when I found out that pro-rata clause had some caveats to it, some limitations to it. Number one, it has to be for Power 5 schools only, which means San Diego State, Boise State, these other schools won't add any extra value. And two, Fox didn't agree to it. It was only ESPN that agreed to pay extra. And ESPN has 63% of the deal. Fox has the other 37%, which means any new additions would only get 63% of the revenue, which is about $20 million per school. So then I'm like, well, there's no way any Pac-12 schools are going to leave for only $20 million because they're bound to get more than $20 million in their Pac-12 deal. So my thoughts have been since then, there's no way the Big 12 is going to be able to add any Pac-12 schools. It's just not feasible unless the Pac-12 implodes, which at this point I didn't see as an option or a possibility. Then yesterday, I came across an article, which was November the 8th. I came across an article by Dennis Dodd of CBS Sports. Let me just go share a little bit of this article with you. It starts out, the headline, Pac-12 should be concerned about visibility, not value, compared to Big 12 as new media rights deal nears. And that's interesting because we all know Big 12 fans, Pac-12 fans have been on Twitter, on social media, basically comparing the size of each other's media deals when at the end of the day, we're all expecting it to be pretty much the same. We're pretty close anyway. And so it's kind of pointless. Plus, we're all like way behind the SEC and the Big 10. So it's like we're fighting to see who's coming in third place, which is kind of ridiculous if you want to be honest. But then you go down here and you read the article. Those hung up on the value of media rights deals at this point aren't asking the right questions. Whether the Pac-12 makes more than the Big 12 isn't the issue. It has become less about money and more about visibility. And that's where I think Brett Yormark, I think he saw that. I think he saw the visibility factor in this whole thing because a lot of people were questioning why did he decide to extend this deal with Fox and ESPN 18 months before they could open up negotiations to other networks. I think this is why. I think it's about visibility. And you'll see that as I keep reading here. The advantage of the Big 12 jumping the line to sign a new media rights deal with ESPN and Fox last month at least secures the conference's future. It will continue to be shown on linear television, which means cable and satellite, not streaming. The money is the money, an average of $31.66 million per school beginning in 2025, with an all-in figure of about $50 million per school annually when the college football playoff expands. The Pac-12 is expected to finalize a deal in principle by the beginning of 2023, two industry sources told CBS Sports. One source said the league had sent out a robust proposal to ESPN and Amazon. Notice Fox wasn't mentioned. Fox, from what I'm hearing, is not interested in ESPN. I'm sorry, in the Pac-12, because they've already got inventory with the Big Ten and now with the Big 12. If a deal with ESPN and a streaming giant like Amazon is reached, the Pac-12 would likely be able to command a sum approximate to the Big 12's base figure. The Pac-12's all-in total, including the CFP, bowl games, and NCAA tournament payouts, wouldn't be as large, mostly because the value of Pac-12 basketball pales in comparison to the Big 12. Now, there are other media outlets who disagree with that and think the Pac-12's figure could actually be a little higher once they're all in, if they can find a way to earn more revenue from the Pac-12 or monetize the Pac-12 network. So, it's yet to be determined, but at the end of the day, there's not going to be a major difference, it sounds like. That's why visibility is important here. By cutting in line, the Big 12 also gets access to broadcast windows already choked with premium Big 10 and SEC content. Those two giants already will be dominating the day with Big Noon on Fox, the valuable 3:30 window for the SEC, and Big 10 Saturday night on NBC. USC and UCLA will also be playing Big 10 games in the late night fourth window. Rather, the biggest question for the Pac-12 remains, who will see its games? For the first time, a Power 5 conference would be showing significant content on a standalone streaming service without a TV affiliation. It's possible that caused strong pushback from inside his conference when Big Ten Commissioner Kevin Warren kept advocating for adding California, Oregon, Stanford, and Washington in expansion. So if Big Ten schools are pushing back, you can bet there are probably some Pac-12 schools that don't like this idea. Not only are those schools not worth the $75 million per Big Ten schools got in their media rights deal, the likes of Purdue, Minnesota, and Indiana pushed back against further expansion. They didn't want some of their games relegated to a still emerging streaming platform. For the moment, Amazon has let it be known it is only doing business with must-see premium live sports television properties, namely the NFL. One industry source said, now this is a big quote right here. It's very few words, but a very important quote. Amazon has no interest in bad games. I'm going to repeat that. Amazon has no interest in bad games. So if that means Amazon is not going to want to be relegated to second or third in line, getting, only games that basically the bottom half of the Pac-12. So, for example, they may only want to show Oregon or Washington games. Because keep in mind, USC and UCLA is not going to be in the Pac-12 anymore. So the top two brands remaining will be Oregon and Washington. And ESPN is going to want those. And they're probably going to be, the top buyer of this deal with the highest payout. And Amazon may not have any interest. This tells me Amazon may not have any interest in being a second-tier rights holder for the Pac-12. They may not want those games with Washington State, Oregon State, Stanford, Cal, Arizona State. They might not want those games. Will that cause Amazon to back out of the deal or pay a very, very low amount? As the article mentioned earlier, not only will they get potentially a low payout, they may also not get visibility like they want, which means their games, these schools, Arizona's, the Arizona State, they won't get their games on primary networks very often. They may only get that late night window on ESPN. So how many games a year will they actually get on a main network? That's key here, folks. How can you promote your school to recruits and to donors and other people, even potential students at your school? Keep in mind, guys, sports is a way for schools to brand themselves and to promote themselves to potential students, not just athletes, but students in general. And if they're not being seen on television, it's basically a way of advertising themselves. And if they're not on television very much, and they have to get most of their games on Amazon, that a large portion of their fan bases may not even have access to, that's not good. And there could be some pushback from conference members who don't want to do that. And could that still potentially entice some of them to want to go to the Big 12 and even potentially take a pay cut just for that extra visibility? Think about. I mean, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but it's something to think about here in this situation. Another industry source suggested if Amazon wants to go all in premium live sports, it might make a big bid for part of the expanded college football playoff and pass on the Pac-12 altogether. What I was just saying. So, how exactly is the Pac-12 going to position its games so folks can see them? A heavy reliance on streaming could work. It's just not industry standard right now. If anything, there has been a resurgence of traditional platforms. Now, here's a part of the article where it talks about Big 12 expansion, potential Big 12 expansion, and the pro rata clause. It says big details have emerged on the inner workings of the Big 12 expansion. While it's no secret Brett Yormark wouldn't mind expanding beyond 12 teams, Big 12 partner ESPN has agreed to pay pro rata, equal value to existing teams, should the Big 12 add members. CBS Sports has confirmed this. Meanwhile, the league's other partner, Fox, has not made such an agreement. ESPN owns 63% of the value of the $2.3 billion contract that begins in 2025. As such, it gets top picks with the 4 best football games each season, 6 of the top 8, 8 of the top 12, and 12 of the top 20. According to Sports Business Journal, Fox, which owns the remaining 37% of the deal, receives 26 games per season. If the Big 12 expands, the new teams would get 63% of pro rata revenue, approximately $20 million. Should Fox not approve of expansion, this is important right here, folks. Should Fox not approve of expansion, the Big 12 would retain the right to shop those added games to other media partners. Still, those added games wouldn't be available for a new partner until after Fox had made all its picks. So this is something I wasn't aware of, and had actually been wondering about. And I'm glad Dennis wrote an article on it because it's answered a question for me. If Fox, let's say the Big 12 has a chance to add, let's say Arizona State, Colorado, and Utah, okay, just hypothetical, and they go to ESPN agrees, Fox doesn't. Well, that means Brett Yormark and the Big 12 can go talk to a third party. They can go talk to an Amazon. And let's say the Big 12 goes to Amazon and says, look, we can add these 4 schools from the Pac-12. And you would get basically third tier, we'll just call it third tier for lack of a better term, third tier rights to these games. Do you want to do this? And if Amazon is willing to give these schools, let's say, I don't know, $10 million on top of the $20 million they can get from ESPN, that gets them to $30 million. It doesn't reduce the payout of the existing Big 12 members, and it gets the new members close to what the current members are, and might even get them at or above what they would make in the Pac-12, and they would still be able to get some of their games on ESPN and Fox. I still think there's a way here, and I think Brett Yormark is looking long-term at this here. There's possibly still a way that Pac-12 schools could be enticed to leave for the Big 12, even though the revenue might not be that much higher. They might trade revenue for visibility. And like I said, if the Big 12 has a third media partner, they could still get their revenue up where it needs to be to entice some of these schools to come over. And let's not forget, the Pac-12 hasn't gotten their deal done yet and has not signed their grant of rights yet. And what if some schools in the Pac-12 refuse to sign a grant of rights? Then ESPN might back out themselves because Bob Thompson, former Fox executive, has put on Twitter many times, networks might not be willing to do business with them if they don't sign a grant of rights, if their schools don't sign the grant of rights deal. And if Oregon, Washington, Stanford, Cal, any of these schools want to leave, they may not be willing to sign a grant of rights, at least on a long-term one. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. I still don't think the Pac-12 is 100% stable just yet. And I do think the Big 12, I still think there's a path. I think it's a narrow path, and I think it's probably not likely, but there is still a path for potential Big 12 expansion with Pac-12 schools. So it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out over time. But how will it play out? Time will tell. Well, let me know, Cougars Corner family, what you think about this topic. Let me know in the comment section. Do you think there's still a path for the Big 12 to add some Pac-12 schools? Or do you think the Pac-12 will be able to figure out a way to survive? Please, guys, if you want to support me financially, there's a couple ways you can do it. You can check out my merch store. Links at the top of the description box. You can get a shirt like the one I'm wearing now. You can get a shirt with my new channel logo on it. And there's a few other different designs you can choose from there. You can get hoodies, T-shirts, tank tops, beanies to cover up your head in the wintertime. It's all right there for you at my merch store. You can become a member of Cougars Corner, take advantage of some special content. Hit the join button right below to do that. If you want to support me free, there's 4 ways you can do it. You can like the video, share the video with your friends, leave that comment, and last but not least, you can hit that red subscribe button. Help me get to that 5,000 subscriber mark, which is my goal. I want to get there by the end of the year if possible. It's a tall task, but I think we can do it together. So I need your help. Please subscribe if you haven't yet. I really appreciate your support. I really appreciate you tuning into this episode. And until the next one, Q Country Roads.